right? And really, there's no way to be certain out in the field itself, right? Because they're so close to each other that they can crossbreed, right? So essentially, they're the same bee, right? Africanized honeybees have slightly smaller wings. They're slightly smaller, and in order to be sure, a sample has to be collected, and they've got to be taken in, and the wings are actually measured. The wings are put on a light slide and showed up on a wall, and then we take a yardstick and measure how long it is, and then average the length of the sample. And if it comes up small, then we say there's a tendency for it to be Africanized, but if not, then they're just aggressive Europeans. It seems to me, and I hope that maybe nobody takes this out of here as real information, but I have had the opportunity to work Africanized honeybees in South America, right? And to me, the behavior is entirely different, even from the most aggressive Italians, right? It seems to me, I was just trying to think about how to say this as you were speaking. I guess the Italians, like an angry Italian, would sort of, hey, what are you looking at, huh? and just sort of, come out and sting, and maybe, I don't know, run, you get stung. Usually there's warning. You got like in football, you got your 2-minute warning. All of a sudden, just for no reason, you can be in the brood area, and the bees, you can hear them just, start your watch, do whatever you need to do because they're starting to get annoying, right? And that's not a dangerous thing, but they're going to let you know that it's time's up. I feel like with the Africanized bees, they're much more nervous, and there's no warning. The 2-minute warning is 2 seconds, and they're in the air. And this is nothing. Again, this is not information that you can necessarily take, but they're much runnier. You can pick up a brood frame, and the bees are just gone from it. They're just like a squirrel, like a super nervous squirrel, except it's a bunch of bees all around you, just sort of waiting for the signal or whatever. What are you doing here? And just all around the air and everywhere. And they will find the little place to sting you. I had my son was on this trip, and he was only 9. Right? He was really nervous, and he dressed up like an astronaut, which was what he was supposed to do right down there, because this is not anything to mess around with. If we become an area that has Africanized bees, you simply cannot have them where people are. They have to be way out the field. The smokers are entirely different. They're amazing smokers. They're literally this deep, and the back of the bellows has a handle on it, just so you can just really, the smoke just comes pouring out. Everyone who's finished working if you go with a group of people, if you're finished working the colonies, they have to set up sort of a smoke wall, and somebody's designated the smoker, and they have to, the bees have to be smoked off, and so you can walk back to civilization. It's really very different. If you're working bees with a good friend, and you say, hey, where's the smoker? I need the smoker. It's over there. Find yourself, right? But if again with Africanized honeybees, that's a serious thing. If somebody says smoke, it's like Mayday. You've got to respond and get them. So anyway, I was showing off to my boy, and because I said, listen, since you're here, don't you want to get stung by an Africanized bee just to say that you got stung? It's kind of neat to go back to school. No way. And so I was away with my camera, away from the colony. I don't know, 10 feet away. And I said, look, one stung me, isn't that neat? And then just to show it wasn't a big deal. And then he looked, and then immediately, 6 more, pop, 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 pop. And then, 6 more. And he says, hey, how are you standing there? So it gets to be a serious situation really quick. And to me, I've never seen Italians act like that. They're generally not nervous. They can be very aggressive. They can pour out and sting, but generally the behavior is really different. So as far as what Tim had mentioned about aggressive Italians, and by Italians, of course, I mean whatever mutt, right? Respectfully, whatever mutt we had in our yards. I feel like that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to keep a colony like that. Some people just absolutely won't hesitate. I will pinch that queen today, and then order one, and hope one gets here before the colony dies, before I have that in my yard. Some people say, I don't care because they're great producers. Sometimes they're not great producers, right? But it's up to you about what your circumstance is, how many young children are in the house, or whatever, whether you want to keep a really aggressive colony of bees. Sometimes it's seasonal when they turn aggressive, like right now, when generally speaking the honey flow is over. It happens more in July. It gets really hot, really dry, and the bees have been in the spring flow mode, so they've been really busy, and there's always stuff to do. If you've noticed that during the tulip popper flow, you can stand in front of a very busy colony, and it's just they just go right by. They don't even care if they hit you. They get around. They're just totally preoccupied with the bloom. But when that bloom is over, I feel like they get nervous and irritable. And you can go into a colony a week later where you had no protection at all, and they were just as gentle as they can be. But all of a sudden, hey, this colony is annoying, or annoyed at me. Who knows what really makes the bees annoyed? I walked into an apiary with somebody, and we're 10 feet away, and I'm peppered. Just out of nowhere, they start stinging me, and my buddies laugh at me because he's standing right next to me, and they're not bothering. It's the same. It can happen either way, right? And many times I've been called out where people say, "Look, I've got these super aggressive, bees, unbelievable," and I didn't even put the lid on. And so I think, "Oh, what is this out here?" But for whatever reason, maybe the bees were in a bad mood, maybe who knows what, but there's no trouble at all. You just put the thing back together, finish what you're doing, close them up, right? I have noticed that there's a little thing that happens when people, this is mostly with beginners, and I'm looking around, I don't see a whole lot of beginners, but as you remember being a beginner, what did you do? You dressed up like my son did in Bolivia, head to toe, and what that does is it's certainly important, and I always recommend that to beginners, to absolutely protect yourself, because your new hobby can get a little dicey if you start getting too many stings at first, right? Later you get used to it. But what it also does is it makes it so that you don't have to pay attention to the bees as well, right? And so there may be a little more banging than the bees want to put up with, right? And so if you're ever working bees with a beginner, that's something that you need to consider. If they're dressed up and you're not, and they're banging and banging because they haven't had to deal with being gentle around bees. Sometimes that can also turn an otherwise gentle colony into an annoyed colony. So I don't know. That's sort of, those are my general, sporadic thoughts about Africanized versus Italian bees. I don't know if that's if that's answered any questions for people, or if it's just made people more confused. But if anybody's got any questions.
If we have a question about whether they're aggressive enough, or if we have an aggressive hive, should we contact you?
I think that's not unreasonable, right? If it's exceptionally aggressive, like the chase you down the road, that's can be a cause for concern. I can remember that happened in a town near here with a beekeeper who's not here, so we can. I don't like to mention names, but he said, "Come out, look at my bees," and I did, and the bees were really aggressive, right? And they were really nervous, and I just thought, this is no good. I said, I feel like these are too aggressive for this area. I mean, I made that judgment. There were horses, literally 10 feet away from him, and from his bees, and that horses are really sensitive to bee stings. And I said, it might be a good idea for you to recolonize or requeen these. And he says, well, I hope they're Africanized. I'm trying to get Africanized genes in here. Man, what are you talking about? And he said, well, they're better bees, they're more mite resistant, blah, 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 blah. And, that's not legal. Technically, that's not legal. You can't keep them here. And so, I called my supervisor, and who lived right near this guy, right? And he went out and looked at them. And he said they were exceptionally aggressive, and he took a little sample and did the wing measurement, And it turns out that they were not. They were, just, annoying or annoyed Italians. But I think any kind of colony that's consistently, aggressive, it wouldn't hurt to just, maybe give one of us a call and just have a look at it.
Well, not that we're likely to get Africanized bees here, but suppose someone did bring some up from Florida or somewhere, would they even be able to make it through the winter here?
All right, that's a great question. And so I can remember, I don't know if people in the back heard, she's wondering, will Africanized bees be able to make it through the winter? I can remember when I was a child keeping bees, my dad told me, he says, don't ever worry about that here because those bees can't form a cluster. The old school thought was these bees are from Africa. They're a hybrid from a sample taken from African bees, right? And so that's why they call them now Africanized. And they're from an area that never has a real winter, right? It's sort of sub-Saharan Africa, where it's always warm. And so it was thought they had lost their ability to form a cluster, but that's totally out the window. And someone has figured out that they can survive as far north as Ohio, right? And our friend Ed Levi in Arkansas has pointed out that they have, he's the apiary inspector for Arkansas, or the former apiary inspector for Arkansas, that they are established in Arkansas. And I said, well, that's your problem, I guess, Ed. He says, yeah, but look at it, draw a line from Arkansas and see where it ends up. Uh-oh, yeah, wait a minute, that's our problem. Okay, so they can absolutely live here. But one thing, another comment to make is they came in through Texas in the early 90s, right? And it seems that they took a left turn and went to California, where they, just absolutely just took just a short amount of time for them to colonize all the dry desert areas, right? When they went right, they've stumbled. Okay, so it's been a tougher run to come here, and it's thought that it's not because of the winter, but because of the rainfall. The rainfall actually it makes it tougher for them to survive. They're not as much of a hoarder of honey as Italians are, and they'll do goofy things like abscond or swarm in September, right? So I feel like they don't do as well here, but I think technically they can survive.
Is it colorization? More so, just the wing is the only thing?
There are a lot of different measurements that you can take. Generally speaking, they're a slightly smaller bee, but there are plenty of small Italians too. As you know, if you have old comb, that comb, the brood comb is going to get smaller every time it's used, and I feel like that also contributes to smaller bees, right? So size, wing measurement is the real telltale.
But if they're Africanized, even when there's a small colony, like 2 or 3 frames of bees, and you're sitting right beside them, they should be as aggressive as if there was a lot more bees.
Yes.
So it's not like, the bees got worse as they got more bees.
Oh, okay.
They weren't like that in the beginning.
Okay.
Because in the beginning, there were 3 frames. That's how they went through the winter, right? Tim, I got them from Tim.
Oh,
that explains.
Bad seed. So, but they were on a screen board. He had to feed them all winter. They had no stores. A little nuke on 3 frames went through the winter.
Maybe it's, that's why they're so mad.
They were fine March 1st. He said there was not a cell of brood in there. They went from 3 frames of drawn comb with bees to a double deep and shallow in 3 months packed.
Dying and lights. Keep those, right?
No.
Oh, is that bad? So another story, and I don't know why I'm just telling the story, but just I feel like they sort of makes a picture overall. But I don't know how many of you remember Bill Shepard, right? He was an inspector who's been retired for about 40 years now. And so we were having one of our seasonal inspectors meeting. And he says, boys, these bees he had these queens in queen packages. There were 3. He said these are meaner than Africanized bees. And as you know, if you know Bill, he's always embellishing. Meaner than Africanized bees. He said we went there and they were stinging everything. They stung trees and the tires of my truck, and they're the craziest bees ever. Now I hope that nobody made me repeat this, but I was in need of 3 queens. That's a kind of a nice I don't know thing, because he says I'm going to kill these. I just wanted y'all to see them. And the queens were kind of small, and I don't know what. And I said, well, I'm going to take these and sort of do some experiments on them or whatever. And he said, be careful, don't have those around kids. And so, whatever. So I installed them into my bees, and I waited, left them in the package, and they never chewed out. So I uncorked them, and as one of them was falling down, I could see between the frames the bees, the workers, all jumped up, and I could see them like biting all over. Well, there's that. It's whatever. And so it turns out they were just welcoming her because they didn't kill her, and they all 3 turned out to be dynamite queens that were not aggressive. Right? So I don't know. I usually would trust Bill's opinion because he knew what he was doing, but I feel like there are many variables as to what can make our European bees turn mean or not. Right? But I think always an Africanized colony is going to be really nervous and really aggressive. Unless, I think Dewey Caron figured out that unless you can take them higher than 17,000 feet. I'm sorry, not 17,000, 7,000 feet, which we don't, we need a helicopter for this thing to do that. He found, for whatever reason, he moved, this was also in Bolivia, down in the low areas, bees are aggressive. You take them to the higher elevations, they become less aggressive, right? And then you can take that same colony back down and again become aggressive. So, but they're still as productive, right? They don't slow down or anything like that. Maybe, yeah. Yeah. It's hard to be mean when you can't breathe.
Will, we kind of, a question, you kind of talked about either or, but it seems if you got all these packages coming out of Florida and Georgia, would there not be some genes mixed in somewhere along the way?
Okay, so that's a good question. I wonder about even the mixing. I thought, why would be a tape? Here I am saying stuff like that. They're like, don't tell people I said this. Okay, yeah. All right, so I guess we got the apiary program. Okay, so gosh, how do I? So I thought that 2006 would be our year to have them established, right? But for some reason they haven't been. It seems unbelievable that a package of not mixed, but real pure Africanized bees would be brought here. But for I don't know what reason, knock on wood. So it's probably the inspection service, North Carolina Department of Agriculture. That's why I'm here. So the one thing about mixing genes is there's no mixing, right? It's that so many people have as the next wave marched into a new area, the beekeepers said, okay, we're going to flood the area with our drone, with European drones. We're going to requeen with proven mated European bees from another area, and we're going to make a hybrid. Many people have thought about this. The problem is there are 2 problems, and it's a macro and a micro genetic problem. One is you can't flood the area with drones, right? It's just impossible because the true Africanized colony is going to be producing all of their drones. You can't keep them out of the area. And any Africanized genes all carry the grumpy gene, right? That makes them grumpy. So if you're a little bit Africanized, you're still going to be, mean. The European queens actually prefer to mate with the hybrids, right? So that's not good. And also, the Africanized genes are all dominant to the European. So even if you get a nice mix in there, the European genes are actually going to be pushed out of the way. So the idea that of hybrid after I believe it's a full year is out the window, right? You can't go to San Francisco, or I shouldn't say San Francisco. Let's say you can't go to Mexico and find European genes. They're all going to be African. So anyway, I don't know if that really answers my question, but so far so good as far as the Africanized genes coming to this state.
Program tonight, Will Hicks will be talking about nectar plants. Welcome, Will, and the floor is yours.
Okay, fantastic. Wow. So before we get into the applause, I had one of those moments in this room just about 30 minutes ago where you think, hey, it's getting hot in here. Is it just me? Because I checked my files for the I've got all organized my files in Windows, which talk disease, whatever, blah 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 blah, and then nectar plants, and I kept let's see, nectar plants gone. No nectar plants. I don't know why. I can't. It's been I don't know why. But what we had a little situation that I need to take care of.
Let's talk about
we've got talk about what?
Sailing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, so after I sell enough money, that'll be okay. Well, anyway, so as I was leaving, my lovely assistant, my stepdaughter Anna, came along to hear the talk. But it turns out now she has a job because what we're going to do. Nectar plants is not a topic that you can just talk about because people need to see what the flowers look like, right? You can talk about disease, you can talk about whatever, but you need a visual for that, for the nectar plant. So what we're going to try, I think this has never been tried in I don't know, human history. I don't know, but we're online and we've got little images, and we're just gonna go down the list of flowers. I don't know, about 10 years ago we came up with this nectar sources throughout the year. So we start in January, in sort of a little winterish, and then move all the way down to the first frost. And we cannot talk about all the nectar plants, but we've got sort of maybe the highlights of them. And of course, if anybody's got any questions, if there's gardeners in the group or whatever, absolutely we can talk about others. But I'm sort of glad everyone's here for this new experiment here. Where I'm actually going to put the internet on a public screen without knowing what it's going to be on it. So I don't know what will necessarily come up, but I'm locked out of the computer, so I'm going to need to get my password in. My password is ... All right, we'll start off in I'd say late January, right? Maybe it depends on I guess we're a little bit south of where I am. I'm in Orange County, but everybody knows what this is, right? We've got Acer rubrum. Very good, very good.
I got one that blooms right after Christmas.
Is that right? Yeah, you're kind of south too. But this is an important nectar and pollen source. I don't really know that anybody is collecting nectar because the bees generally eat it. But this is sort of after the first frost, everyone sort of, I don't know, maybe beekeepers get a little bit nervous about who's going to make it through the winter, right? This is the first hurdle that's overcome, right? It seems that during December, during the Christmas season, nobody is thinking about bees much at all, right? But right afterwards, people start thinking about bees, and then everyone's looking for the first signs of maple bloom. And the super common tree around here, you'll see your bees carrying in what looks like bright green pollen, and that's what I'm working. Maple. All right, so next. All right, so this is just for fun. I sort of add this in here. Who can name this? Any Latin for this one? Trout lily. All right, fantastic. The reason that I put this in here, this is not such a producer here, right? As you go north or even west in the mountains, this is much more of a pollen producer. In certain areas on the Eno, at the right time of year, the Eno is west of here, you can see, a lot of it. I wanted to put this here to show that a lot of times in river basins, there are plants, a lot of them, that aren't found anywhere else. And I guess here, the only places that I've seen are in the immediate little basins of rivers. But this is trout lily. It's also called dog tooth lily. When you were a kid, if you were at my side of the mountains, the kid that went up to the mountains to live, he ate the bulbs. They're evidently edible. And when I say something's edible, please don't take my word for it. Absolutely don't take my word for it. Anyway, it's super nice benefit. Next. All right, who knows what this is? This is the best image that we found. This is what I call, it's an old-fashioned ornament that I'm sure somebody's got. Winter honeysuckle, or breath of spring, or fresh breath of spring. Super fragrant, really nice, and a decent. Yep, the bees like it. It's a decent source of nectar. They grow very easily, so if you've ever grown one, you know that you start with a small one, and before long you've got a really big. If you've got space for it, I would recommend planting them. That's a better shot of it. These, I think they bloom just about the time that actually they bloom before Mahonia. I think of Mahonia as another sort of old-fashioned ornamental. Some people call them grape hollies. They also seem to, they don't have very many blooms, but that's another good nectar source. Bees really seem to want to wrap that up. All right, next. All right, any more Latin? Taxericum officinale, right? Most people don't want it in their yard, right? Kill those dandelions. But they're good for bees and for people, right? The roots go deep to get nutrients up to the upper part of the soil. They can actually, the roots, and again, don't take my word for it, but I read somewhere you can actually roast them and use them sort of as like a chicory flavoring with coffee. Good for you. They're good for your kidneys and good nectar source. So maybe you could I don't know, on your lawn you could have a little space for dandelions. Yeah, people say no. What's that?
Little space, yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, of course, if you have a little space, you'll have a big space. Okay, next. All right, now we're sort of moving along the season, right? Right here, this is red dead nettle. All right. So yeah, there's plenty. This is one of those spring weeds, along with henbit and along with the green one, chickweed. That's it's all of a sudden, you can go from the frosty garden to what happened? Covered in weeds. Dynamite, honey plants, bees love them. See, here we have a bee on the bloom. To me, the blooms almost look like little orchids. There's a tiny little low-growing plant. If you're driving down the road and you come to a pasture that was even plowed under in the fall, you can still see that if you look right at the ground level, the whole ground has a purplish hue right at the ground. You know that's what that is. Either that or henbit. It's fantastic. Even though it's a headache in the garden once it gets established. Of course, also on the other hand, as soon as the temperatures turn hot like now, you can't find any. I actually saw one yesterday in Orange County, which was really weird because usually by now they're all totally gone. Take a look at the leaves. You see how the leaves are really big and they're big. They're not really big, but they're sort of, I don't know, whitish, relatively speaking, overlapping, right? That's the dead nettle, right? Now, do we have the henbit? just by comparison, see they bloom at the same time, and they're both purple and they're both low growing. All right. Sometimes you can see them mixed together, and so the leaves here look different, right? They're not as I guess they're more. I guess you'd call it serrated, right? These cuts, go deeper. But anyway, another good source of early pollen and nectar. All right. So I can't remember who's next.
Apple?
All right. Okay. All right. So next in this slide, again, this is a little bit nerve-wracking to me because who knows what comes up when you Google apple blossom, right? I apologize if good. Real apple blossom. All right. So I put these here just to any of the ornamental trees. This is about the time of the year that they bloom, right? Of course, apples, pears, even nectarines. A lot of these, if you go, stand underneath them, it sounds like there's a motorboat in the tree. The bees work them so well. So a lot of times if you can find a more organic-ish apple orchard, because in some areas they require a lot of spray, but it's a nice nectar source, nice pollen source, and it's really good for the apple yield also. Right. Apples. All right, next. Hey, redbud. All right, so redbud, fantastic. Really beautiful. They're easy to grow. If you're into that, if you need like quick shade, dynamite shade, big thick leaves that really are really nice. They bloom. I gave this talk. It was a real treat in the mountains with these older beekeepers, like I don't know, 90, and they had little stories about all these. They'd say like, we call that Judas tree, the Judas tree, and I had it during the talk. I said, okay, so why do we call it the Judas tree? That's a heck of a name, right? And it turns out because it blooms on Good Friday, and so it's I don't know. This year it was almost done by Good Friday, but it's associated with Judas. But fantastic, super common edge of the forest plant, good nectar producer, and a lot of fun and easy to grow. Right, next. And again, if I'm skipping over one of your favorites, you want to, I don't know, bring it up, that's also okay. Or if you have a question about some nectar producer or not that we're missing.
What about forsythia, which is an early one?
All right, forsythia, I'll also put it, you always see what with it, forsythia and another old-fashioned plant.
Oh, yes. Spirea.
No,
It's early.
it's either salmon or red. Oh man,
Oh.
I need this. Quince, flowering quince. Okay, so a lot of times you'll see them together, or they're blooming at the same time. I don't know a single, I've never ever seen or heard of either of them producing nectar or pollen. I have seen a bee on flowering quince before, but absolutely never on forsythia.
I've seen the pollen sacks just packed with them on the plants.
Yeah. There may be some variants that.
The rose family just like pears and apples.
Yeah, they look like it too. Yeah. All right, I can't think what this one is. Okay, so this is the queen of our our flow. Of course, it's the tulip poplar, right? It looks like a tulip, but it isn't, right? It's not a poplar either, right? It's technically a magnolia, which kind of makes sense, right? It looks more like a magnolia blossom. A gemstone it's super common. Just right out the window, we could probably find 10. I don't know why I'm even. I just sort of should put this up so that people can just check it off because most people here know what this is. Especially if you've you've ever, has anyone ever had the pleasure of parking underneath one? When it's in bloom, right, you'll have nectar all over it. It actually pours nectar. I noticed that in certain areas where the highway department doesn't keep the trees, the highway department, where they mow. If they don't mow and the trees are allowed to grow over the road, you can actually look at the road and find at night where the tulip poplar are, because they make the road wet underneath. So it's a dynamite producer. No matter what anyone says about sourwood, remember, this is far superior, right? Right. So it's a good, rich, dark, dark reddish to me honey that's every bit as good as anything from the mountain. I say respectfully. Sort of. So I always know as you know, the blooms start at the top of the tree and work their way down. So if you see the blooms at the bottom of the branch, we're sort of coming toward the end of the season. Roughly speaking, tax day, or I remember my mother's birthday, right? To call her when the tulip poplar. Some people go to the trouble of putting up a telescope to look at the top, but all you have to do is look in your colonies, because your bees will show you if they've been in it, right? Who knows about this? When the bee climbs into the flower, their backs scrape against the pollen, right? And so it looks like a greenish stripe right down their backs, and it's even startling to see for the first time in the season, because you say, hey, they're going. To me, the two things indicate the end of the flow, right? And that is when the bees start washboarding, right? During the flow, I mentioned earlier, right? The bees are just zooming in and out, and you can't make them. If you kick them over, they just say, "Hey, we're sideways, but we still got to go to work." But as soon as it's over, I feel like, and this is just a guess of mine, that the washboarding, which everybody's seen, when the bees collect on the front of the box, and they sort of space themselves, and you can just see them just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I feel like it's sort of a nervous thing that the bees have been so active, and now it's stopped. And so they just, if you've ever worked in a restaurant where they say if there's time to lean, there's time to clean. And so maybe it's just sort of, there's nothing to do, so they just sort of, maybe we'll polish the front. I don't know. But another way to tell is as soon as the elderberries start to bloom. And I guess that's coming up, so we'll take a look at that. But, so who's next?
Blackberry.
Blackberry.
It kept coming up with the sheet music for that song, Blackberry Blossom, like the old.
Oh, all right, so that's a nice surprise. So blackberries, another, not necessarily a super high producer, but you certainly can get some nectar and a little bit of pollen from them. It might flavor your tulip poplar honey, but in unplowed ditch or space like that, it's going to have probably some blackberries in this area. Really good.
Well, what color is that pollen?
I don't know. That, to me, it's gray pollen I associate with oak, but I don't know. It certainly could be gray. Yeah. I don't know. Going kind of fast. Nobody's got any questions?
What if it has bright red top? We saw some of that early spring here. Bright spring.
That's I would call that the one of the either the hen bit or the red bit. Yeah, that's my guess. It comes in with the green maple. All right, who's next? I scribbled a list. I can't.
Locust?
Perfect. Not too much locust here, a little bit. As we go west into the mountains, this becomes a significant honey source. Again, you don't know what locust is. Oh, look, the insects. All right, so after your honey operation has really taken off. Lotus.
I put locust in it, thinking.
Yeah, it's a T. There's a T on the end.
You didn't put a T.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
Hold on.
look, there's no T on the end of this.
This,
We're looking at birds.
you put,
Uh-oh.
Black, you look about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, locust tree order.
All right,
Okay.
All right, we've got both honey locust and black locust. Honey locust is more towards the mountains. The black locust is, it's a really nice bloom that you can see here. It's not so uncommon. It dangles down, it's kind of a big bloom. It's a whitish bloom. The honey it produces is, yeah, that's it. It's really nice. Look at someone mistook wisteria for that. But it's really sensitive to rain. And anytime if there's a hard thunderstorm during the bloom, yeah, they come off. And so it's not something to count on unless you're in the mountains. And I'd say about every third year they have a good locust flow. And the honey is sort of the color of, I guess, Susie's shirt. It's just kind of a deep yellow. Really delicious honey, I think.
all right.
All right.
How about holly?
Holly, absolutely. Holly, we're done with holly as far as this season, but that's a dynamite fruit. The honey is, to me, it's kind of sharp. It's like a little bit acidic, but it's really nice. It's a nice honey. Anytime you can, have, if you see a big holly hedge, and your bees are next to it, they're gonna love it.
Well, is there a difference between the hollies that the landscape planted, so a lot of them around, and the hollies that are naturally purchased? It seems to me that the hollies I see have been planted bloom at a way different time than what's on the Ambrose list when they're supposed to.
Right. I think that's the case. Anytime you have an ornamental, it's out the window as to when. They don't necessarily bloom with the
There's a lot of them around.
we have a lot of, I guess, the natural holly here is the American holly. And I feel like most of the time that grows in the woods, so it's not going to bloom very much. But when I say hollies, I'm assuming it's ornamentals, right? Because they're the ones that are, allowed to grow, and they're so big. And you can see under the leaves when they bloom. And I guarantee that if you walk up to one and look under the leaves when they bloom, you'll see all kinds of leaves.
And the bloom is really small.
It's a tiny, tiny little word.
They're early. They're
They're-
before the poplar.
The earlier, yes, that's correct.
And it's like a 2-week window. And it's and that honey is really light.
Yep, that's
And
right.
if you live in an urban area, that is your main, you can really take advantage of that.
It's a good honey source for sure.
We have a lot of wild clover.
That's coming.
It has the pink, ours still blooming, so we have coming in summer. We have the pink one and the white one, but it's like 2 feet tall. It's
They can be, well, absolutely, anything in that legume family, right? Whether it's any of the hay, the clover, alfalfa, sweet clover, vetch, crimson clover, any of that is just fantastic. So I'll tell another story. Beginner beekeeper, maybe it was beginner of luck. This was northern Granville County, and this was late May, after the flood, pretty much after the flood. And so we're looking at the bees, and she says, "Oh yeah, my super's full." And I said, "Yeah, it's to be expected." She said, "I put it on last week." And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, I didn't have any drawn combs, so I put on foundation a week ago." All right, this woman was a very serious woman. There was nothing joking around about her or dishonest. And I said, "Can you tell me that this full super, it was a shallow, but it was full and ready to harvest, was 1 week ago, was foundation?" She said, "Yes." And I said, what's going on around here?" And she said, "Well, in the spring, I planted 20 acres of sweet clover." And I said, "Well, that'll do it." Right? So if there are any, horse people around, or, any time that if you plant a lot of that, you will absolutely increase your yield like crazy. I mean, and 20 acres is enough to really make a difference.
Sweet clover. The regular white stuff that's in my yard, I've never seen it bloom.
Is that right?
But it's like the bumblebees are all, I see bumblebees all the time. I've never seen it.
What time of day?
They'll love that.
What time of day?
Usually during the middle of the day. I sleep late, go to bed early.
I've
seen them on it
Your
about
local
2 or 3 o'clock in
trees
the
that are in your
afternoon.
yard won't go to plants that are really close, that they tend to go out further.
I think there's something to that, right? Because so many people, it's a real disappointment to beginner beekeepers when they plant a garden and they put the chair in the garden. I'm just going to wait for my bees to pollinate everything. And what happens? They don't do it, right? You think, what the heck? Many times people ask me, why are my bees, pollinating my own garden? I think among other things, that distance thing may be a factor. Also, if you think about the nectar source of, a row of squash and something else in the woods that's blooming, much more, that they're going to go to the greater nectar source. Perhaps if you're in a desert and you have a garden like that, they'll come to yours. But one thing that always really annoyed me was I planted a lot of bee balm, right? Monarda. And I just thought, what a great person I am, right? Helping the bees, blah, 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 blah. And they never, ever worked. In fact, one time I had elderberries. And, well, no, that's not elderberry. But the elderberry bloom was leaning on the bee balm. And the bee jumped on bee balm. And I almost took a picture of it so I could show it for talks like this, because otherwise you have to take a dead one and put it on there. Because bumblebees love bee balm, but honeybees don't. So, speaking of that, anything in the mint family is grade A, right? They will go crazy for that. And if you plant, no one here has this, but if you were to plant 20 acres of mint, I don't know why you would do that, but it would flavor your honey, give it kind of a little zing to it. Kind of nice. All right, did we do
We didn't do milkweed
elderberries?
yet. Well, I was just getting the picture, because, did you do milkweed yet?
No. Is that?
This one was
Okay,
first.
all right. So milkweed, unfortunately, a lot of these important nectar sources are also, kind of difficult for those having pasture, right? This is, farmers generally don't like this, even though, monarchs, this is their only source of food, right? These are actually good plants. It's been said, and again, remember, I'm not a doctor, and I'm simply repeating what I hear. But they say that the milk, if you snap the stem, it really pours out. It's even milkier than milk. It's like Elmer's glue. That supposedly, I don't even know if I should say this. Maybe you turn the camera on. It's supposed to be a cure for warts. I don't know if that's true, and I don't recommend you doing that. But there are a lot of different aspects to these plants. Again, to somebody who's trying to have a nice pasture, this is a big problem, because those seeds, in the fall, they just take off and they really can wreck a pasture. But anything in this family, whether it's butterfly weed or milkweed or dogmane, are all nectar weeds. And they're really kind of nice. Yeah, and they're beautiful. Will you scroll up a little bit, Anna? Or if you can. Yeah. See. Okay. So here we have. These are. This is the milkweed family. This is the butterfly weed, which is in bloom now. Almost certainly, when you drove here, you can see some of this. And these are the milkweed, and I think the dogbane is done.
The Joe Pye weed?
Joe Pye is it's later.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've seen them. They're tall now. 6 and 8 feet tall. It's a different plant. I usually associate them with a little bit later. All right, who's next on the list?
We didn't officially do elderberries.
Okay,
Unless you did.
let's do elderberries. All right, is everyone? How's this going for people? Kind of nice. All right, okay, good. All right, we're running. We're coming to elderberries. Now, absolutely, you saw them coming here today. Elderberries, bushes about that tall, about 6 or 8 feet wide. They're super easy. Some people say, why would you ever put them in the garden? But I love them. I went to the woods and dug some up. It's impossible to kill them. Cut them off the ground, dig them up, and plant them next year. Gardeners say that plants over 3 years, they sleep, creep, and leak. Right? These go from sleep to leak. They miss out on the creep part. But, all of a sudden they're gigantic and really good. Bees kind of like them. this to me, when I see this, I get a little bit sad because I know it's the end of the tulip poplar bloom. There's some medicinal value that's associated with these, and the berries produce so fast that in some cases, especially this time of the year, you can see berries and blooms on the same plant.
How tall does it get?
I think I would say, in a pinch, you could say 8 feet.
Okay.
Right? Because what they grow straight up and then they sort of bend down. So maybe if you catch it before it bends down, I don't know, 8's maybe a stretch. 6 to 7 feet.
What is the berry look like?
It's a little purplish berry with a
This is purple, it really stings.
Yeah, it really stings, and it's a giant pit. There's a big, it's just a little watery, meat for you.
I'm just gonna kill it.
All right, who's next?
But that's the berries for
Yeah, hey, look, the berries.
Look like little bitty grapes.
Yeah, look, I agree. Here we go, like this.
Yes.
Hey, so this is an advantage of having, you can sort of plug it in.
Yeah.
All right, so,
All right.
so who's next?
What about
I found that, I haven't noticed, I've got a bunch in my yard, and I haven't noticed that the bees work. Honestly, I only noticed it when the fruit falls on the ground. All right, I think we've mentioned clover. Anything in the clover family, and I don't mean clover family, but legume family. It also is thought by some to bring luck. I don't know. Right, only the 4 leaves.
What kind did that lady have that you said she planted 20
She had 5. No, it was actually sweet. It was sweet clover.
Ladonna?
Nope. Sweet. Yeah, all yellow. Yeah, that's one that your bees don't seem to do you mow?
And two different houses. Yeah, I used to mow around when I first got these. And then I just started mowing because they never go. I even moved to a different house with a different clover. Took my bees with me, but they don't like that clover.
I noticed that at our house, they've got like clover area where I walk out there, there's no reason.
Don't walk out there barefoot this time.
All right, so of course everyone knows what this one is, and I think we have some of this plant. Perfect. We have this plant in this county, right? Technically, I think. Although the real nectar producers are much more demanding. This is a lot of fall pictures of, here we go, right here. And any of these green ones. Fantastic nectar producers. I think people in the mountains have done a way better job than us of marketing sourwood honey. And, I can remember even 10 years ago, they could get $20 a quart for their sourwood honey. And we should be getting every penny of that here. And I'm serious. For our dark honey. It's amazing how the trends, just like in every kind of food, ebbs and flows, right? 20 or 30 years ago, the lightest honey was the most sought after because it's the purest. It doesn't have all that stuff in it, right? But now it's just the reverse, right? Why would you want something light when you can have things in it, whatever it is, minerals and stuff? Dark, dark honey is now. I'm kind of being serious. I don't mean like not funny serious, but I'm not kidding. That the dark indicates something, and it's sought after much more than the lighter. So, and local, right? I do say that to me, and again, you can do this however you want, but local to me is the Piedmont, right? Because it's really the same pollen source, right? Again, I mentioned that I live in Orange County. And I think that the nectar sources aren't that different from Zebulon all the way to Orange County, and even as far west as maybe, I don't know, past Winston or even Charlotte. I think all of that is, to me, local. I don't know, what your definition is, but to me, it's the nectar source. Once you go to the coastal plain, it's not local. And once you go to the mountains, it's not local. All right, so before you do pumpkin, would you put in ironweed?
Iron?
Yep, ironweed. This is one of my favorites.
Will, did you say that sourwood here though doesn't produce nectar well?
It seems to me that it's not, for whatever reason, people don't collect a lot. You can see some of the blooms around, but it's not a big source, right? Maybe it's because it's less common, or maybe it just doesn't do as well here.
Danny James said he made some sour with it one year in his backyard.
Yeah. He's got a lot.
And he's pretty straight.
Yeah. As we get into the summer, we see ironweed, right? This is kind of I don't know what. I'd say a mid-grade nectar producer. It's more for the pollen. Bees seem to like it. I like it. I love it, actually. It's a beautiful flower. That's the same mountaintop that I gave. You know, I asked this guy, the Judas tree guy, I said, you know why is this called ironweed? And he said, yes, I do. Because the roots will stop a plow. Boom, and you know, so it's ironweed. So anyway, I just wanted to mention ironweed. And you can't mention ironweed without mentioning, would you put in Joe Pye? It's P-Y-E, Joe Pye weed.
2 words? Joe Pye?
Hyphenated. Eupatorium. They might have changed it. It's not Eupatorium anymore.
It's kind of like chocolate mist.
Oh, all right. So here, another dynamite plant. I love this. I don't know why I get so excited about Joe Pye and ironweed. These are later summer bloomers. Beautiful, nice. You can. I don't know if you want some of these for your garden. I've heard that you can drive to swampy, low areas and get out quickly and dig some up. And then, I don't know if you're into that, but they'll establish. Bees sometimes work, but I don't know. I think they're more common up north, and so there's probably a better source there. So evidently, there was a Native American whose name was Joe Pye, and he was kind of like Johnny Appleseed for Joe Pye weed. I don't know what they called it before him, but it's supposed to have some medicinal effect that's beneficial for your lungs. I think he was able to reduce the virulence of typhus. That's just, again, I'm just passing that on. If you get typhus, I think you're about it. But fantastic. That, this means, the summer's coming, or the summer is winding down, and anyway, just a nice one. I guess let's skip pumpkins. Sorry, I know you tried twice. Who's next?
Okra?
Okra.
Okra.
All right.
The plant or the blossom?
Blossom. Or bloom. Okra, right? Okra is one that I have seen in my own garden. They work like crazy. Everyone knows what an okra is, right? What?
Wow.
No, I don't mean what it is.
It's delicious.
What family, right? What family is it? Hibiscus. People know the plant. All right, this is an African plant, right? Just like hibiscus and just like cotton, right? So it grows in the south where hot, I think there's a certain place, once you start getting maybe north of the Mason-Dixon, no okra up there, right? Then we don't ship them. Good source of pollen, and the bees love it, right? Okra, who would have thought? And so can we put cotton up next? Is cotton next?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so as you also know, cotton is another African plant. It's also hibiscus. And you can actually you can get nectar from this, as most people know. You can, take your colonies for the last part of the summer buildup and see how similar the blooms look? It's a very similar thing. Something happens to it later, I don't know what that is, but the bloom is really nice. And farmers always would appreciate it.
Crystallizes very quickly.
Right, that's right. A good point.
Like 2 to 3 weeks.
When I say that, I don't mean for you to collect it, right? Because it also is really bland. It's bland and it crystallizes pretty fast.
Okra or
That's
Thai?
either. I think, generally speaking, people don't plant okra, unless you really, really love okra, right, to have it up so that you notice it in your colony. But cotton honey definitely crystallizes in the cells very fast. And if you harvest it, it will do the same in the jar. Most of the time, what people do is they take their colonies, especially if they're going to go to California, their colonies need to be strong early in the year, by January. So they want to finish up strong, and they take their colonies to cotton patches, right, or cotton fields, and let them build up, and they leave them with that honey for the winter. Fantastic. All right, who's next on the list? Marsh marigold. All right, so I put this in. Could we? I know burr marigold was my other choice. Could we put that one in?
Instead?
Yes. So what we have is the burr marigold. This is not a real marigold. It's actually it's a helianthus, which is, I'm sure a lot of people know, is a sunflower. I mention these because people know these as stick tights, right? If later, after these are blooming, if you walk through a field of these, the seeds will be all over you, right? I'm sure, everybody here knows that. But what I want to point out is, just like the tick seed sunflowers or the burr marigolds or any of the numerous late summer yellow plants, right? That's what all these are, and just a nice source of honey, or I'm sorry, of nectar. One thing I have noticed, and maybe other gardeners can corroborate, that is, in your garden, you can plow it, keep the weeds down until July, right? And you will not see two things. You won't see any asters, and you won't see any of the tick seed daisies, right? But if you stop weeding, you can actually, I don't know why this is, these plants to me don't show up until the end of June or into July at all, right? And then they come right up and bloom. So they don't come up in the spring, at least that I've noticed, and wait to bloom until the fall. They come up late in the summer. I don't know what they were doing in the ground or whatever. But see if that's not the case. See if you can't, you could walk around and not see aster or the tick seed daisies or the goldenrod. They're just not up yet. But then, boom, they come up around the 4th of July and they bloom later in the year. So this is part of the entire the late blooming yellow plants, right, which are just a minor part of the fall flow. As is goldenrod. All right. So what we have here is solidago. And this is, I have technically, this was in northern Person County, I've seen goldenrod bloom in June, right? And that's a fact. I've seen it with my own eyes. But mostly it's associated with a late summer or fall variety. There are so many varieties. There are at least 20 varieties of goldenrod, right? We call them all solidago. But you've got the short kind, the tall kind, the medium kind, I don't know what kind. And some of them produce something that bees like, but a lot of times they don't, right? So it's kind of it's a hard sell to know whether or not your goldenrods are any good. But the last, and so everyone recognizes this. You can just see the different varieties here. There's some kind of, I don't know what bug on that, but and I see lightning bugs on them too a lot. I don't know why, but sometimes bees. But the queen of the, or the king, or whatever, of the fall flow has got to be the last on our list tonight, which is the aster, right? And the aster is a wonderful plant. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't start blooming until, I don't know, way into September, maybe even October. And it blooms a little bit past the frost. But these are New England asters, the purple ones. You can actually see both kinds growing in our mountains. See the purple kind and the white kind together. But if you just pick a white one, Anna. All right, everyone knows that this is they're, you know, again, wonderful plants. To me, they don't show up until July, and then as soon as you see that, that's like, you know, big time, you know, when you think about harvesting apples or pumpkins, you also see asters too, right? You can tell when your bees are working it because you can stand in front of the colony and it smells, to me, like butterscotch. It's this luxurious, you know, heavy butterscotch smell because the bloom smells like that. A lot of times, we'll get calls in the fall that, you know, there's something wrong, something smells bad in my colony. Maybe I've got American foul brood, but it turns out that that's most likely going to be your goldenrod, right? To me, goldenrod's got a sort of an off flavor and smell to it, but aster dynamite, right? It's a beautiful smell, and if the weather's right, if we don't have a crazy drought, let's say Labor Day, we get this nice gentle hurricane that breezes through, it doesn't destroy anything, but puts 3 inches of rain on the ground, everything comes right back to life, and then we can have a, you know, a good fall flow, and the asters are a major part of that, and so they can make or break the fall flow.
Are you saying aster honey is good?
I wouldn't say that. I don't think I'd go that far.
Oh, okay.
I'd say it's not as bad as goldenrod, right?
Okay.
Both tend to crystallize really quickly, and most of the time, the spring honey is considered superior, right? And so that's harvested, and then the fall honey is what gets the bees through the winter. Okay. Sumac is another good one. That's one that I just left out. I think we're done with sumac already for the year. That would be a little bit, well, maybe not. Yeah, it's
I see mine in the fall, more in the fall.
golden rain tree is also, it's winding down.
It's blooming now.
But that's a good one, that's another good one. What was it? Either one. Really good nectar producer.
Question about buckwheat. Is there a variety of seed that works better in our area?
I don't know of one. Most of the time, the seed dealer has figured that out. I've never, I didn't know that there was that much variety of buckwheat. I'll just go and say.
I've tried to research it online, and there seems to be as many differences of opinion as
that
as there is other things that we keep.
I would speak with the guy that bought the seed and just say, look, I guess you know that this, you know, works here. I've never heard of anybody not having success with buckwheat. You know, I have heard of big time variance in sunflower. Some people have planted sunflower for nectar and bombed out, and then some people have, you know, put birdseed out, and that produced nectar. So as far as I know, you can get actually 3 crops of buckwheat in season, right, if you cut it under right. And the honey is kind of like molasses, like light molasses.
Is there different kinds of rain tree? Is it just one kind of rain tree, or?
To me, I only know of golden rain tree. Right, the ornamental that's kind of blooming now. You got the spiky, deep yellow blooms.
Exactly, but I've got another place I've got some rain tree, and it's not even coming into bloom yet.
I wonder if they've got that like persimmons, if there's a male and a female variety.
That might be.
Yeah.
But like you say, they work it to death.
Yeah, they like it.
Washington hawthorn?
I don't know.
I'm going down from Michigan. My dad's being headed heavy, so.
Oh. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure tonight. It's the first time in, I think, 3 years that I'm not able to talk about Varroa mites. Thank
you. Just a quick question. The state beekeeping calendar has those major nectar flows. How far off are we from those this year? Do you have any idea?
I think that I would say that we're back on track.
Back on track. So the mountains, the sourwood, and all that's, it's going to be starting when you think?
I think so. Yes, I think so. I don't think that. I think that if winter runs late, I think everything catches up. That's my opinion, right? It's
I
not like.
was watching the Hawks and they went into it precisely almost to the day.
I noticed that also. I didn't want to say that. Yeah.
Right to, almost to the day, when the calendar says they go with blue.
Yeah.
How about stopping, if they stop?
I don't know what it's not.
It's hard to tell because they sort of peter around. You know, there was a guy in Southern Wayne County who, on the third day of April, he said, "Oh, they've been blooming for 2 weeks." I think he was like, yeah. To me, this year they also started pretty much on.
I had read something recently, I don't know if it's in Urban or whatever, it said that if you buy plants from like Home Depot and Lowe's, then they can be bad for your bees.
I don't know how.
Because there's some kind of chemical that they put on their plants.
Oh.
That's not necessarily true because my bees are close to both Home Depot and Lowe's and I see them over there.
I didn't know, it was, you know, you
It's,
read stuff
Actually,
online, you don't know.
there's also a guy in Bailey that supplies blueberry bushes to Home Depot, so they come right up. You know,
I was thinking more like the wildflower things.
If the people that Lowe's follow the label, which they're supposed to do, it's not going to hurt the bees, right? Because they shouldn't apply pesticides during the storm.
How good a plant is Russian sage?
I have found that they don't touch me, right?
They won't.
They won't touch mine.
They do mine.
Really?
Yes, sir. Yeah, but I don't know how good a plant it is.
That's wonderful. I think Russian sage is fantastic.
But the Joe Pye weeds you were talking about a while ago, I destroyed mine because I couldn't get honeybees to go to it.
We'll,
In fact, I killed it with Roundup.
but my bees are coming over.
For 3 years. 3 years they quit on.
A quick observation, but we planted a bunch of food plots and put tall tine tubers, which were turnips, but the tall ones.
Right.
Well, the deer ate all the turnips off halfway down, and that next spring, all the fields were covered in waist-high yellow turnip flowers and covered in bees.
Yeah.
Covered in bees.
All right, so anything in the brassica family, which I didn't mention, right? So canola, broccoli, whatever, you know, all that, you know, I guess turnips too. Anything that yellow spring bloom, they go crazy for, right? And they produce, you know, super. I think it's a little bit bland, but clear honey, right?
Very clear.
Someone said it's kind of for them. It's kind of like McDonald's for us. Super fat. I think bees need that kind of thing. So I'd say that anytime you can not cut under your fall greens and let them mold, I think you're helping your bees.
Do we have basswood?
Yes, there's one near some people in this room.
I got one bastard fruit.
Yeah.
It's planted that it's like on farm.
Yep. That's about one of the few. That's one of the few that I know.
Is that a little league also?
Yes. All right.
If you had the space and like you wanted to kind of have like a spring, summer, fall, crop, like what would you plant? Like if you could just plant.
Like tractor, magic, and everything. I think that like you can't get that out of my mind. What the woman in Grant County said about sweet clover. Right.
Yeah, Christmas clover works very well here.
That's the red, red.
Yeah, red.
Planted in the fall.
Yeah, that's my thought. All right. What